Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's sharing. I was thinking about all the important things that astrology offers, and that is an endless list. And so, when considering what I wanted to talk about today, I decided I would start a small series talking about aspects. Now, aspects are super important because they are the wiring system of our astrology charts. Now, no matter whether you are studying or practicing as a traditional astrologer, a modern astrologer, an evolutionary astrologer, or any other modality, aspects are crucial. So, what are aspects? Aspects, of course, are the mathematical separation between the planets. How far away is the sun from the moon? Or in what distance is Venus from Uranus? And so on. And today I'm going to start by talking about the first aspect, which is the conjunction. Now, I'm going to come back to the topic of orbs in just a minute. But first of all, I want to share what is a conjunction. Now, I hope that there's many different people watching this reel, and you may be a professional astrologer. You may be just getting on the path of wanting to become a professional astrologer, or you might be curious, and that's it, or wanting to really understand what your soul contract is. And as an evolutionary astrologer, the soul contract for me is a crucial piece of the ancient script. So, conjunctions, episode 1 of aspects. What is a conjunction? As I said before, well, I like to think of conjunctions as the gods coming together to alchemize their superpowers. That sounds, for me, it creates a visual. What are Mars's superpowers and what are the moon's superpowers? And of course, what are their challenges? Now, if I was to talk more technically about what is an aspect or what is a conjunction, I'm going to say conjunctions are fusions of energy. They are two planets, arm in arm. Where one goes, the other follows. And that can, of course, create struggle or ease or anything in between. This is like a daisy chain of the beginning of two planets coming together to really work on bringing their, as I said, superpowers together. So a conjunction is a really potent expression of two becoming one. And there are lots of things to consider when looking at a conjunction. One of those pieces is which of these planets may be more comfortable in the clothing of the archetype that they have chosen to be in. So, for example, a Moon-Mars conjunction in the sign of Capricorn. Which of these two may initially lead the way? Mars in Capricorn from a traditional perspective is exalted. The moon in Capricorn from a traditional perspective, and I'm not a traditional astrologer, but certainly I like to follow, there's pieces from all our astrology that gives us great insight. So the moon in Capricorn, of course, is known as being in detriment. Now, both of these planets in Capricorn are, of course, perfect in this example because it's what that soul chose to work with, what they chose to heal and grow to fulfill its highest good and potential. But just from an energetic perspective, Mars is certainly going to lead the way initially. So, these are things to consider when we're looking at conjunctions as to how the two chemicals, gods, archetypes alchemize. And what's the evolutionary potential behind them, of course. Now, I said I was coming back to the topic of orbs. So, orbs, as I said before, the technical degree, how far is Mars from the moon, to keep with the same example. 8 degrees, I'm going to just cut through it. You're going to hear lots of different astrologers give you lots of different opinions. At the end of the day, you have to practice, explore, and gain your own insight into what you feel is right for you as an astrologer. But I'm going to share with you, I've had the most amazing teachers. I've been so blessed by the universe. And pretty well all of them said 8 degrees, 10 degrees when the sun and moon are involved. So that's what I've worked with for most of my career and will continue to work with. And it certainly feels like, for me, that sits well. But I want to add something here. Everything is energy. And so, energy, if you have 2 planets in Capricorn, for example, perhaps they're not technically within orb. Perhaps they're 13 degrees apart. And so they're not a conjunction, but they are on the same team. They've both come in with an evolutionary intention to grow Capricorn. And so that is going to give us different insight, just worth just remembering. It's not maybe technically a conjunction, but the two do want to bring their forces together and work in a way that they can both benefit from supporting each other. Okay, I hope that makes sense so far. So let me go on to share my screen. Let's hope the gods, fingers crossed, are going to be kind to me, because my computer and PowerPoint have been challenging me lately. But let's see if we can share the screen. And here we go. There we go. Alrighty, so I want to just share a little bit more about working with conjunctions. Now, this is a random chart, doesn't belong to anyone. It's just a moment in time that I picked. And as we can see, there is not just a conjunction here, there is actually a big stellium. And when I get to talking about aspect patterns, I am going to be talking about stelliums in their own right. But for now, we can see, if this was a person's chart, Neptune is conjunct Mercury, and Mercury is conjunct Chiron in this chart. Chiron is conjunct the midheaven. Venus is conjunct the sun is conjunct the moon, very tightly, actually. Look at that, 21, 24 of Pisces. Mars, of course, also conjunct the moon, and an out of sign conjunction to Uranus. And I particularly picked this chart because I wanted to just add a little bit here about out of sign conjunctions. In other words, it is a conjunction, but the planets have slightly different agendas in relation to the archetypal field that they've chosen to be in. We also see, of course, Saturn conjunct the North Node, should this be someone's chart. So let's talk for a moment about out of sign conjunctions, because they are still conjunctions, still a fusion and an alchemy of the gods coming together to join forces to support each other. Now, I also want to add here, when working with conjunctions, don't just go straight to, Mars plus Uranus equals X and talk about X. Talk about Mars. Talk about Uranus. Talk about why Mars has been called in to give Uranus some advice. And why has Uranus been called in to give Mars some mentoring? And then together, how do they express their uniqueness through the archetypal lens of whatever it might be? Now, coming back to this example, we can see Mars in Pisces and Uranus in Aries. And so we know that Mars and Uranus are both there to work as a team, to unify and really make breakthroughs Uranus, in relation to, let's say, asserting oneself in new ways, Mars, or maybe having the courage, Mars, to break free from old restrictions, Uranus. That's a given. Now we could keep going, of course, but I just want to say that, Pisces and Aries, they're not both in Pisces, they're not both in Aries, they're in two signs. So both agendas are blending here. Pisces about having a vision, and Aries about being independent. Now, I'm just pulling words right now, but we have to bring both together. And if we were sitting with this client, if this was a client, we would want to be working, of course, with the whole stellium, but we have to break it down. We have to unpack it piece by piece. And when working with conjunctions, we do have to unpack them. So, just some food for thought for you. Now, I'm also going to just go to the Saturn conjunct the North Node in Scorpio for a moment, because now I want to talk about conjunctions when it is an angle or a point or something different, not just two planets. And of course, the North Node is always such a beautiful piece to speak about, because we know that the North Node offers the soul the healing remedy that it so desires and the way home in this lifetime. So Saturn, when on the node, so when we're looking at any planet conjunct the North Node, I'm going to just stick to the North Node for now, we know that that planet becomes part of the medicine and the healing. It is part of the remedy or the key to unlocking what is required. Now, that means that we want to be adding all the Saturnian adjectives that we can come up with, like boundaries and structure and foundations and being a realist and getting serious and down to business and being an elder and so on and so on and so on. And that is part of blending with the North Node desire to heal in this lifetime. So if that be an angle, we have conjunctions to angles. In this case here, we have Chiron on the midheaven. So, Chiron is offering his wisdom, his gifts, his advice to an angle that is about how we fulfill our mission in the world. And so the more we work on our mission in the world, the more we may find perhaps some pain, but by being in that pain, some really beautiful deep healing. So anyway, just to give you a little bit more, let's just throw a little bit of a summary as to what I've been talking about so far. So intensity. Conjunctions are intense. They can be subjective. They are incredibly powerful. And as I said earlier, they are about the alchemy of the superpowers that both gods bring to the table and express through the archetypal lens of whatever we have chosen and signed up for. So superpowers indeed, and you can also think, most gods that have superpowers or superheroes, when we're watching movies, they also have kryptonite. So what's the kryptonite? And of course, we always want to ask ourselves the evolutionary potential and the why factor. And coming back to the example of the chart that I have on the screen at the moment, why has this soul chosen to be a Sun-Venus conjunction? What is all of that about? And why? That's always a very important evolutionary astrology question. That's it from me today on conjunctions, aspect number 1. Now, if you have conjunctions in your chart, if you have questions about conjunctions in your chart, or you're not even sure, please feel free to comment. Give me the thumbs up as I'm growing my YouTube channel, and I will look forward to seeing you the next time, whether it be when I talk about sextiles or another interesting astrological topic. So until then, I'll say bye for now. Thanks, everyone.